The goal of Data Transformers podcast is to accelerate digital transformation by bridging the gap between business outcomes and rapidly advancing technologies. And we aim to bridge this gap by focusing on data. I am Peggy Tsai, top 50 women in tech influencer, co-author of the AI book, and data governance expert.
I'm Ramesh Danta, an entrepreneur, a tech blogger, and AI enthusiast.
Welcome, everyone, to today's Data Transformers podcast. I'm so pleased to have Diane Schmidt, the Global Director of Enterprise Data Governance at London Stock Exchange, with us. And another reason why I'm happy to have Diane here today is, unlike many of the other chief data officers that I've seen in practice, Diane, you really represent a different type of chief data officer in terms of being able to walk the walk, talk the talk. You've actually done a lot of the data management and data practitioner role that's really needed to be, I think, a really successful and effective chief data officer. Diane, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be a part of this podcast and really excited to share just my thoughts and certainly my experience and really just to help others and maybe not make the same mistakes or as many mistakes as I've certainly made along the way, but happy to share my journey.
Welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Ramesh.
So Diane, let's maybe just start a little bit about your current role at the London Stock Exchange. Talk about what brought you to London Stock Exchange and what opportunities you see in terms of the data space working for a stock exchange company.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually started in 2017. I was part of a partner in a boutique consulting firm, data management and data engineering consulting firm. And we were brought in to conduct a data assessment and help the London Stock Exchange Group understand current state and really provide direction on where to go with the data space. They knew, they knew they needed to change the way that they were doing things. They knew that, and they identified, many of the issues. We didn't certainly come in and see anything that they hadn't seen. I think they just really wanted confirmation. So I really was there first as a consultant, and then this opportunity came up, and I think for me personally, I was after 5 years of being a partner and doing consulting, and it's a great, certainly I've seen some great opportunities, worked with some great partners, but I was ready to settle back into an operational role. The role came up, and I asked them if they'd consider me, and they said we would. And they stopped looking, and they worked with me to bring me on board. So that's what brought me to London Stock Exchange Group. I think, tremendous opportunity there in terms of, I'm not going to, the word transform gets used quite a bit, but, and I don't think London Stock Exchange Group needed transformation, but they needed to change, right? In terms of really bring some efficiencies to what they were doing. I think a lot of smart people, had a lot of really good ideas, but it was really just bringing in, I think, the expertise with feet on the ground to bring it all together and wrap it up and bring it into a program, a cohesive, comprehensive program. So that's where the opportunity was and still is, and we're still moving forward. I think the London Stock Exchange Group is an incredible brand and has been for several hundred years. That the company has certainly progressed through inorganic growth in the last 20 years, and we'll continue to do so. We have certainly acquisition of Refinitiv coming up, and we're excited about that. But I think the opportunity will be different. I think we've done a lot of work and setting up the program from a foundational perspective. 2021 will be all about execution and demonstrating that we can essentially really, I think, improve the health of our data ecosystem, as well as set it up for potential monetization, for potential more sort of predictive, I think, work, in terms of analytics. So I'm excited about that.
Dan, I was looking at your progression. You've been in the data space almost looks like from the beginning, like you are a data manager. So over the period, working for Freddie Mac or different companies, what kinds of changes have you seen in the space of data management, data governance, right? There's a lot of talk about governance, privacy, security now because of predictive analytics that you mentioned, but what have you noticed while working for these companies in terms of data management, in terms of data governance?
Sure. I started off as a data engineer, data modeler a long time ago. I was taking a class in the 90s, let's just say, and I walked in and I wasn't in the data space quite yet. I was doing it informally, but I walked into this class and I sat down next to a woman, and she got up and announced to the class and said, if anybody wants to be a data modeler, we're hiring. And I thought to myself, I'm not quite sure I know what that is, but I want to do that. So that's really and I got up enough courage to finally share my sad little resume at the time, and they hired me, and I had to actually take a pay cut. But I knew that if I took one step backwards, that I would go 10 steps forwards, and that's exactly what happened. So yes, so I started off as a data modeler, and now I think of the world differently. So when I see a receipt in my mind, I'm thinking, how would I model that receipt? How would we see a product, and we see a store, and I see an ID, and I see a customer, and so all of those things. So that's, in my mind, that's how I think. How I've seen the industry change, and many years ago, when I was data modeling, creating databases, creating models, again, to support databases, and they would have these launch parties when they would, like at Freddie Mac, finish. They would sort of have these big product launches, and they would forget to invite us because we were just we were back end. We didn't and it's funny because it's we sort of get someone say, oh, I was sorry we forgot to invite you, Dan. They throw me a t-shirt from the party and say, oh, sorry, next time. It's different now. Now data is just front and center. It is not something that people forget about now. It is something that people think about in the very, very beginning. Thinking about data as really the critical, strategic, one of the primary assets for companies. And it's watching that progress over the years and being a part of that is really, really fun. It's like, finally, okay, I know we have work to do still, but at least people really acknowledge how important data is to our companies, regardless of what industry that you're in. So that's been enlightening to see.
What a great story about how you started. I think that is phenomenal.
I know that's so interesting, and we at this podcast really love to really showcase how people kind of get started. So that's a really great story. Diane, what I want to pick up on was what you said in terms of not being invited to those parties, right? Because data has not really been the forefront of the business for a long time, but up till recently. And you and I know that in the past, traditionally, actually the technology groups have sort of taken control, or they've seen themselves in control of data management because they own the systems and things like that. So what are your thoughts on, you know, someone in the data role focusing only on the technology or information technology aspect? Is that enough to drive and execute on a data strategy?
I think a lot of times when CTOs or CIOs move ahead and really focus on those strategies, it's because there's an absence of. So think about, you know, think about technology strategies and laying those out and presenting those. Really think about, it should be driven by the business strategy, the data strategy, and the technology strategy should really be the solutioning, or how are we going to provide the solutions to solve these problems. And a lot of times, the reason why I've seen is because there's been an absence of that leadership, or that the staff to provide those requirements to the technology, to the technologists to so that they can actually play the role. I see them reaching in because there's a gap, or there's some sort of an absence of a data strategy, or an absence of those drivers. So there, a lot of times it's out of good intentions. It's, or you may have leadership who feels like that is their space. The data management space, there's a role for everyone. There, you're right. There's the business role, there's a data role, there's a process role, there's a technology role, and I think it's all about making sure folks are clear. But what I can say is that part of, I think, the CDO function is providing those requirements. So think of CDO also as a CRO, which is Chief Requirements Officer. Mm-hmm. The role really needs to focus on collecting those requirements, synthesizing them, prioritizing them, and then providing that view and that vision to the technologist, so that there is a handshake. Because it's, like I said, it all really has to do with that absence or misunderstanding. But if there's a handshake and you have a clear data, business and data direction, then the technologists can really just focus on their solutioning and not the reach back.
So Dan, one of the things, just to follow up on Peggy's question, is it feels to me that we talk about data management, data governance, but it's mostly talking the talk, right? But in terms of the actual changes or actions, for example, there's a debate about CDO, should they report to who? A CFO, CEO, right? So which part of the organization? Data governance, is it under CIO? Or should it be in the business side? There are some best practices we all keep talking about. I mean, from the last 5-10 years, I've seen that. Yeah. But from an implementation perspective, it is still, there's a gap from what I see. Are you still seeing those gaps, that it gets, doesn't get enough respect, enough governance and this management aspect? Or the things have changed enough that now we are saying it is critical to the business, so we have to, behave in that fashion? Right.
There has been a lot of discussion and a lot of debate over where a data leader should report into, or where the group should sit. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a really good article or paper written by Dr. Rich Wang and Dr. Lee on sort of the cube and the maturity of a CDO and what's needed when along the way. That is interesting. So I would definitely refer you to that, sort of, because what it tells you is the skills needed at the beginning of the journey, the middle, the different levels require different types of people, or different types of skills, I should say. I think reporting line depends. I mean, I hate to say that, but so for example, I've seen it work I've seen it work well at different places.
Mm-hmm.
I think whomever has the wherewithal to make the ask, to make the business case, to get it started, that's the right thing to do, regardless of where it sits. Mm-hmm. Yes, we'd like to, we'd like to see it sit not in IT or independently or what have you. But I think in the beginning, it really doesn't matter because it's really all about getting it started. And then you can adjust. Then you can make a play for where you should sit or where you should go, whether it be reporting to the chief risk officer or the chief financial officer, or even the CIO, if the CIO, if the CIO has broader management experience, and because a CTO or a CIO is not just about technology, it's about the information. Yeah. So I've seen it work well in just different places, depending upon where the company is in its journey, what the maturity is, the literacy is, all of those things. So the recipe is different, right? I would say, depending upon where you are. For us, we sit. My boss is the group CDO, and he sits under our COO. We were sitting in an independent division, our information services division, under our sort of ISD leader, and they were very, very focused on indexes, right, or indices, however you want. There's a debate on how you say that, but so we didn't have a group focus. We wanted to. We always knew that probably where we should be to really invoke the effectiveness and efficiencies that we wanted to. So now we're sort of at the group level, and we are the horizontal, and think of the divisions as the vertical. So we're in the right spot, and it's certainly working well. But I think it really just depends on the company, and the success can be there if you have the right leader.
Great analysis, Dan. Thank you. I mean, I think yeah. So it depends on the maturity.
Yeah.
Dan, I agree with you as well. And I think, certainly in your experience, you've worked in different industries. Previously, you worked for Department of Treasury and at Freddie Mac. Can you talk a little bit about some of the differences, either in data practices or even in the data itself, between, more the government side and now for London Stock Exchange, either differences or, similarities, right, in terms of the data itself?
So I think, it's all financial services. So Freddie Mac, is a government-sponsored enterprise. So essentially in the secondary mortgage market, it's mortgage data. And the Office of Financial Research was put into place as a result of the Dodd-Frank legislation as an output from the credit crisis. So it was sort of the place where research products were developed to really understand financial risk, within the data. So I think it's and the same with London Stock Exchange Group. It's really a financial infrastructure company, and now that we're sort of that mission will probably continue to expand based upon our acquisition here shortly. I think the similarities are essentially all about what we all that we all lose sleep over, which is redundant data. Systems that are created that do the same, thing, really about operations and efficiencies. So, for example, if you have a tax accountant, the tax accountant spends 80% of his or her time collecting, organizing, curating the data, and then 20% of the time doing tax accounting. You want that flipped. You want them to do 80% tax accounting, 20% data prep. So it's it's really all about the efficiency and the risk and certainly the quality in the data ecosystem. In simplification is understanding where your data assets are, managing those, accountability, making sure you understand your critical data. And your critical data, in my experience, it's anywhere between 5 and 10%. I think McKinsey came out with something and said that they thought it was between 10 and 20%. I think it's the more focused and the better criterion you have is the better the better decision you can do there. Mm-hmm. I think it's back to the reporting and analytics as well. It's getting to that ability to make decisions and report, because it comes down to that. Getting things in is a lot easier than getting things out, right? It's the typical problem. So the similarities are just the same, just its efficiencies, effectiveness of the data, accountability. I would say the differences are really the content, whether it be mortgage data, whether it be, at London Stock Exchange Group, we buy a lot of data. The business is just different. We focus on different products and services. But the processes, the people, processes, technology, all the same issues.
So that's interesting. So one other thing I noticed, so Diane, is that looking at your LinkedIn profile again, you became a data steward in 2017, right? I was pleasantly surprised. And then I was actually excited that a senior executive decided to become a data steward, because if it were happening in 2008 and 9, probably it would have been, I wouldn't have noticed it. 2017, after having served many senior roles, you decided to become a data steward, because otherwise people think steward is somewhere low in the organization somewhere and it doesn't get enough respect. But what were you trying to do? Were you trying to convey a message? Was it for your own personal experience that you wanted to do? So if you could tell us what's going on there.
Sure. I'm a student. I'm a data student, and I will be. For as long as I'm in this industry. I learn something new all the time. And I think that playing these roles, whether it be a data engineer in a model or project manager, senior project manager, whatever that may be, program manager, steward, it's all about being able to, I think, still be a student, right? And still be, humble enough to know that you have experience, but you don't know everything. So, for me, it's just I like to learn. I like to make sure that I'm armed with what I can, so that I can use my experience and be better, right? I mean, I think that's just my approach. I think when you're able to speak to all levels and try to understand your audience and try to speak to them and not over them or at them, I think there's a lot you can get. That's half the battle. So becoming certainly, and I think you're probably referencing a Calibra data stewardship. I worked on the certification. Yeah. It's like I said, it just being continuing to be a student as well, and just adding to my own personal toolkit.
Thank you. That was very enlightening, and I was surprised. I myself went through a certification some time ago. Yeah.
That's great, Diane. I mean, certainly we hear that a lot from our guest speakers about having a always learning attitude and mentality.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard today and would like to hear more, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite player like iTunes and Spotify. And please do rate our podcast. Also, please go to our website, www.dianeschmidt.com,
www.datatransformerspodcast.com for more episodes, blogs, and information on our speakers. Thank you.